Hey guys, Ezekiel Gentle here. Welcome back to another video on the channel. If you're new, welcome. If you're coming back, welcome back. Please drop a like or a comment, whichever you prefer. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Today I'm asking you the question that I've been asking myself, which is, where do we go without church? For a long time, I got so much fulfillment from it. And after leaving, there's definitely a void. So what do we do with that void? How do we find that spiritual fulfillment outside of the walls of church and church community? To understand the answer to that, we need to understand the question. And the question that has to precede that is, why did we leave the church? I know I've shared that many times here. I'm not going to deep dive into that. You can check out an older video. But I want to talk about the universal reasons why many people may be leaving. Now, this is not based on data. This is truly just based on my perception. So we'll have to, if you want me to make a video really based on the data, let me know in the comments and we'll do that. Number one is that church is a business. And as a business, it has to maintain a successful rate of profit. It has to maintain shareholder agreement and investment, stakeholder approval. And then it also has the customer base to deal with. All of the congregation, it's a big body of people, and some of them have problems, some of them have issues, some have administrative issues, some have physical issues, some have mental issues. There are all kinds of problems that get brought up to pastors and churches that really require being dealt with if they're going to stay on their 2 feet. And this is where many pastors are actually awesome and do great work, but my issue with this is this. As long as the congregation is treated like customers, the organization will function like enterprise. And what I mean by that is there is a strong difference between charity and for-profit business. And that's for a reason, right? Charities are not making money by the actions they're taking that provide the service. If they were, it would be a service-based business. Charities get their funding from a trust, from a grant, from private donors, from all kinds of other avenues other than compensation for the services they provide, okay? So if we can all agree on that being a charity as a rough definition, then if we look at church, why is there the compulsion upon the congregation to give increasingly more and more? Now, I believe in giving. I believe that money has a very important role in our lives, and it helps us get free from materialism, consumerism, and ultimately gain personal freedom to make the choices that we want to make in our life. But with that, I know the difference between somebody who's just promoting a tithe and an offering versus somebody who, from the pulpit, is really trying to compel the audience to reconsider how they even think about giving so that they'll give more. It's not bad to teach on this. And of course, if we were all living the way the Bible taught, we would be giving everything we have to each other. We wouldn't be living in homes trying to accumulate wealth, trying to get our careers further and further. We'd be living together. We'd be trying to be a rising tide that lifts all boats, giving the shirt off of our back to the homeless people, and creating ways for our society to grow and build. But we're not really doing that. So we can kind of drop the act that we're all looking for ways to get more like Jesus or like the Bible and give more, right? I think it's fair to say that if we wanted to give, we would. If we wanted to be in charity, we would. If we wanted to volunteer, we would. So beyond that, the business model of church that promotes gaining more congregation members so that it can gain more of a tithe and offering, it's crucial for the church to survive. And that right there is where the problem is. I'm not saying the church should go find other funding. There should be private donors, which there are. But the whole way that funding happens in that community is very dependent on the congregation being willing and able to continue to give more and more. And this is what leads us to our first problem. When the church is a for-profit business, we are not really the congregation members that the Bible talks about, where we're equal. We have the opportunity to use your spiritual gifts as you deem necessary. You have to be kind of in the crowd of the elite who are leading the church to be able to use your spiritual gifts, quote unquote. And I'll give you a really good example. After I moved from Oklahoma to California, I was looking for a church to become a part of, and I found one that I loved because I had actually heard their pastor for years, and he's one of the most prophetic people I've ever heard preach. He is powerful. He's written books that are really effective and helpful, and he's a great teacher. He's a great pastor. Huge fan of him. He's a celebrity, internationally renowned. I'm not going to say his name because it's just not worth it. It's not about him in that way. It's about him. It's about his whole team. But this video is not about disparaging him. It's much more about you understanding and appreciating how these things work. Because unless you've been on the inner circle, it seems really great. It seems really cool. But here's one of the problems that happened. I'd been in this church for a while. I was volunteering. I was helping out they had this room right next to the main area where all the adults would be worshiping and having the sermon or whatever, and I would actually be leading worship for kids. A lot of it's very much like just kind of play. You're singing songs that are really just fun and have truth to them and nuggets of Bible verses in them, but not that heavy, not that intense. So I was next door leading worship for the kids during the music, and then the sermon would start, and I would go in and listen to the sermon, right? Well, I was a part of a community group at this church, and we met at my friend's house. He was the leader. He had officially gone through the training the church required to be a leader of a community group. You could call it house church. In college, we called it C group. A lot of different names that these groups go by, but this is where real community happens. This is where real church happens. This is where the Bible is actually manifested in the modern age. It's in these smaller group settings, this house church type settings where people can actually open up and be who they really are. It's incredibly powerful. Why do you think that all the 12-step programs that are successful have breakout groups where the guys are together, the girls are together? It's because it fosters a level of safety, psychological safety, that empowers those who are there to share vulnerably. And that is so rare. That's rare to do in work. That's rare to do in public. It's rare that somebody's vulnerable, right? I think we can agree on that. So these groups are so powerful for that reason. We were in this group. It was going super well. I had met some amazing people there. We were praying for each other, sharing life, sharing food, talking, watching movies. It was really a powerful community. And for me, I had just moved. It was so important that I had that. Well, we started talking about some topics that were kind of in the news, that were kind of in the mainstream of culture, which were things like sexuality, things like what if somebody is gay, things like what if somebody has this particular sin in their life, and what does the Bible say? And we weren't leaving it up to an authority. We were getting our Bibles out. We were actually looking through the Bibles. We were checking Scripture and sharing with each other, kind of in a healthy debate to find out, what really does the Bible say about us in relation to people who say that they're gay, for example? Well, we know the Bible verses about homosexuality being a sin, but is there a verse that says it's up to us to condemn them? Is there a verse that says we're the ones who ought to judge them? And we couldn't find it. So we started to open this idea of you don't have to conform to this belief system to be a part of this community. Because what makes this, and this is a very biblical principle, which is ironically backwards in a lot of churches, Jesus was meeting with prostitutes. Jesus was he was doing shameful things in public that got him more than just ridiculed. They got him ultimately murdered as an enemy of the state, executed as an enemy of the state. That, we can think about salvation and everything, but he was treated as an enemy of the state because of how intense the inception of his following was. Well, we're having these community groups, we're having these meetings and these conversations, and they're going really well. And eventually, a week rolls around where we get a message from Sam, and he says, "Hey guys, we're not going to be able to meet at my place anymore. The church is canceling our community group. I was talked to by the celebrity pastor I'm talking to you about, and we're no longer allowed to have our community group under the church's kind of covering. We were on the website. People could find us on a Sunday and then come join the group during the week. And he never got explicit with us, but if you've ever been around politics, if you've ever been around manipulation, you can tell when somebody has kind of been sworn to secrecy. You can tell when somebody's been told something that, hey, you better not tell anybody else, because here's the public-facing reason, and then here's the internal reason. It's PR. So that group just got canceled out of thin air, out of absolutely nowhere. That group got canceled. He had these hard conversations with these celebrity pastors who I really looked up to at the time, and we stopped meeting. Now, why am I telling you this story? Well, I'm telling you this story because this is one of the examples of a church doing what it actually espouses to do, and then when it gets out of their control, they cancel it. We weren't required to have a senior leader there with us. We're adults. We're in our 20s and 30s. We're not kids. What the heck? So because of that, they got really, really concerned, worried, uncomfortable, and they canceled the group. Now, this story is so indicative of church being a business. And here's what I mean by that. This group was not generating more tithes and offerings for the church. This group was not contributing. It wasn't bringing in more congregation members to the church. It was for our enrichment, spiritual enrichment and spiritual nourishment that we were meeting together. And of course, we're going to have hard conversations. And of course, we're going to talk about things like sexuality. So for them to cancel us was so pathetic. It made me understand and appreciate even more. Wow. The levels of control in these inner circles is absolutely egregious. And it's one of those things where on the page, if we look at the rules, right, these are the policies, this is how this church operates and runs, it's going to say one thing. But if you look at the practice, it's going to say something else. So in theory, maybe there should have been a board to make a decision about this, but in practice, there was not. It was a gavel being brought down and us being canceled. Yeah, so this is how the church is a business. If it wasn't a business and it actually existed for its congregation to be enriched spiritually, we wouldn't have been canceled. They didn't have to promote us. They didn't have to say anything on the website about, oh, this group's really liberal. They're really taking some risks. None of that was there. It was us. We'd been in the group for months, and so of course we were going deeper. So for it to get canceled was just so obviously power play that I had to stop going. And you can't really confront. I mean, I guess I could have tried to confront the pastor. It would have been really dramatic if I had. I mean, it would have been super dramatic, and I wasn't going to do that. I'd met him before. I'd met the other pastors as well. It wasn't worth it, trust me. There's one other story I want to tell you that relates to this, and if you went to college with me, you're going to really love this story, which is in Oklahoma, when I went to Oklahoma City University, we started a community group for all the Christians. Now, at the time, there were Catholics, there were all kinds of variations of Protestants, but none of us talked to each other, and we all went to different churches, and it was very separate. So one of the things that was a burden on my heart was to unify the church body on campus. So my friends and I got together and we started this group. We called it Community Group. And its sole purpose was two things, worship and teaching. And that's it. We're going to sing worship songs, and then we're going to learn about the Bible and what the Bible says. There's no one person who's running this. There is no one organizing body that's running this. It is actually a grassroots group. So that's what we did, and it was really successful. It caught like wildfire. We started getting more and more people to show up. We had to get into a new space, and the moments were so dense with this kind of spiritual thickness that we were really experiencing ministry. And this is why, by the way, thank you for letting me just ramble today. It is like so unstructured, I know. I have some notes, don't worry, we're going to get back to it, but this little diversion I think is important. We had moments where people were praying for each other, laying hands on the sick. Were we doing things perfectly? Of course not. But none of us were there as each other's authority. We were all there in service to the bigger mission, which was to worship and to learn about what the Bible says. So our worship was incredibly powerful. We had some of the most beautiful singers. I mean, the school that I went to puts out Broadway stars, okay? And we had people belting at the top of their lungs, singing, harmonizing, riffing, improvising. If you haven't been in a worship environment like that, I highly recommend it. And then the teaching it was from me. I would have a few verses that I've been praying about and thinking about, a little thread of a message for the group, and then I would share. I would basically, ironically, follow in my father's footsteps and preach. Well, that was going great until we started getting people from local churches showing up. Not congregation members, but faculty, staff, pastors. They started showing up one by one from different churches and trying to spark a relationship with me and my friend who was leading the group, which was fine at first. I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like, we probably need a spiritual covering. We're probably, we need that kind of accountability. Well, what I didn't realize is that they were actually seeking control. Each one of them made a move to get our group to be under their church organization so that they could promote it. And we thought, oh, that's great. You'll promote it. You'll get us more people. The problem was that they weren't interested in just promoting it. They were interested in controlling it. They wanted the ability to control what we said and did. And this is where churches reveal themselves as being a business yet again. They had groups on campus that were trying to evangelize people, get people to churches. The Baptist Student Union or BCG or whatever it's called, not to mention a bunch of others, they were failing. And then we got there. We had an authentic experience and expression of worship. And guess what? People cared. People rallied because they could tell it was real. And now you're going to come back and try to proxy what we've created for your own church's benefit? Bro, if you really cared about what you said you cared about, you would have come to those worship circles in earnest to worship, to encounter God, not to get us to be a part of your group, to be a part of your organization so that you could get more money. And I don't hold it against the guys who came because they were just the messenger. They were just on their mission. They were told to come by their lead pastors. Some of them I ended up becoming really good friends with. Some of them deconstructed themselves, because the people that I ran with in that circle were so on fire. I mean, they were doing miracles. We were doing miracles together. And I can tell you a story about that if you want sometime. But churches are businesses. Unless you're willing to deal with it as such, you will be really sad when you find that out. So let me just spare you some pain and tell you right now, churches are businesses. They are enterprises. They have goals that have nothing to do with the congregation being spiritually nourished or benefited, okay? Their goals have to do with numbers and metrics, just like every business, okay? Do I hold it against them? Yeah, I do. Because I think if Jesus were here today, he would do what he did. He would do in churches what he did with the gamblers in the temple in the New Testament. He made a literal whip and then went off. He went off. Do you think everybody just ran when they saw him? No, he probably beat the shit out of some people when he was in there. And that was called the righteous anger. Why? Because it was the house of God being made into a profit garnering opportunity. And that is perversion. That is perverse. And so every church who tries to say how people who are gay are going to hell, or people who have a sexual orientation that's not what the Bible says are going to hell, how about you look at yourself first and how you're turning tables, you're turning a profit within the house of God, which is literally the one thing that made Jesus go off the rails and freak out. Think about it. Okay, so the business of church, we've talked about that. Where do we go from here? What do we do? If we were in church, that was us for a long time. We committed, we were a part of it, and now we're not anymore. How do we get those same benefits without being there? I've been asking myself that for a while now, and I don't have a conclusion. I don't have an answer. Here's what I will tell you. As good as it feels to be around other people who believe what you believe, as good as it feels to be around people who are losing themselves in worship Nothing will ever compare to the individual expression of faith, seeking truth, of really trying to find beyond, is it Jesus, is it Muhammad, beyond all that, trying to find who is God right now, today, in my life, in my world. If there was a divine consciousness who had the access to me, wouldn't I want to connect? Wouldn't I want to receive the power that he has that I could use? Well, all of that comes from the individual expression of your faith, your spirituality. So here's what I would recommend. And again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a medical health professional. I'm not a mental health professional. I am just somebody who was raised in a missionary family overseas, raised in the church, got burned a whole lot. And I want other people, if I can, I want them to avoid getting burned, and I want them to have the tools that I gained. So here's what I would say. Find a time on your own to either pray, where you're just speaking out loud and you're saying all the things you're really feeling, or journal, where you just write down everything you're thinking and feeling. And then here's what I want you to do. It's very important that both of these things happen, because if you just do that, you might end up in a lower place than when you started. All right, if I'm just saying how I feel and I'm in a bad place, I'm not going to get out of it by just giving voice to it. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine that your words, when you speak them, go into the space around you, and they create, in the spiritual dimension, a vortex. Abraham Hicks talks about this. Imagine your words create a vortex, okay? So begin to put yourself into this create mode where you're making words come out of your voice, come out of your mouth, that are giving you life, okay? Here's what I mean. This is what I just started doing this. Well, I didn't just start doing this, but I just did this earlier. I might wake up and feel not good. I might wake up and feel like giving up. I might wake up and feel like all hope is lost. And to be honest with you, sometimes I do. Sometimes I wake up and I just feel like, wow, what would be the easiest way for this to all be over and nobody to know that I did it intentionally? And that's just me being vulnerable with you guys. You know, I don't think it's healthy for people who are struggling with this issue to be judged. You know, I would never judge somebody for giving up, because I know how hard it is to not give up. But when you're feeling those ways, instead of continuing to ideate on how and why and where and when, try to use your voice. Even if you're in a space with somebody else, even if you're in a space where you can't out loud just proclaim things, put your headphones in, close your eyes, or go on a walk. Walks are really good for this. And just under your breath, begin to say things like, today I woke up in a vortex of abundance. Today I woke up in a vortex of joy. Today I woke up in a vortex of being in the right place at the right time. Today I woke up in a vortex of loving myself no matter what happens. Today I woke up in a vortex of seeing abundant good everywhere I go. Today I woke up in a vortex where everybody loves me and everybody I interact with wants to do business with me, wants to do creative projects with me. Today I woke up in a vortex where love comes to me easily. Today I woke up in a vortex where money comes to me easily. Today I woke up in a vortex where everything that's happening around me is for my best good, for my highest good. Everything around me is working on my behalf. And I'm not going to stop being who I really am just because things haven't begun to work out for me yet. I know I'm on the right path. I know that my vortex is perfect for me. I know that my set of circumstances is perfect for me to get to the next level where I shine and I experience abundance and joy and peace, and I'm well and I'm happy and I'm joyfully moving through the earth with great experience after great experience. You see what I'm doing? This is what Abraham Hicks calls an emotional rampage. And she calls it that because what you're doing is getting yourself into this frenzy of positive thinking. Just like sharks, you chum the waters by throwing out fish and meat, and you see a bunch of fish come to the surface and they start eating, right? Sharks coming to the surface, just eating. That's called chumming the waters. We have to think of our mind as, we're chumming the waters of our mind. We're preparing it. We're creating this frenzy. But instead of it being a frenzy about negativity or revenge or depression or anything else like that, we can create one of abundance and positivity. And then it actually feels good to enjoy our thoughts. Then it actually feels good to be in the present moment because we found a way to create the thoughts that we like to feel and think. And when you can do that, then things around you can begin to change. I had to do this so fervently to change the situation I was in most recently. And it worked. It worked. It was incredibly painful, but it helped me get to where I needed to be. And so that's all I wish for you. What I hope and what I wish for you is that you will get where you need to go, because the limitations between you and your destination, they're low. They're lower than they've been. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of setting your mind on the right thing. And as long as you're focused on the circumstances around you that aren't working, they're going to continue to be a block. But go to a place mentally where you can think about, what if this all works out? What if everything around me is the perfect mechanism for me to launch into the next season of my life? These are the kinds of thoughts that are going to help you get that new mindset, renew your mind, and be able to see the possibility for your future. So if you've been burned by church in the past, or if you've just never felt strongly connected to your spirituality, these are things that you can do, you can try to begin to explore. Who are you? Who are you really? Beyond your to-do list, beyond your career, beyond your ambitions, who is the essence of you? What is the core of who you are? Because that's what I'm most interested in. That's what people who love you dearly, that's what they're most interested in. And ironically, that's where your greatest freedom lies. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this is encouraging to anybody who's watching. Yeah, so I encourage you to try this. I encourage you to try this. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please drop a like and a comment with your thoughts and subscribe so you can see the next video. Talk to you soon.